Minho, please. You're bleeding. Let me call the doctor.
Don't touch me. Look at me, Amara. Look at this blood. This is who I am. I'm not a husband. I'm not a savior.
I don't care who you are!
You should care, Amara.
Minho, please. You're bleeding. Let me call the doctor. Don't touch me. Look at me, Amara. Look at this blood. This is who I am. I am not a husband. I am not a savior. I am bullets and blood and death. You think this is a fairy tale? You think because I put a ring on your finger that the monsters go away? I am the monster. I don't care what you are. You should care. You were almost killed tonight because of me. Because I have a weakness now. You are the weakness. Leave, Amara. Go back to Uganda. Take the money and run before this life swallows you whole. I stopped running the day you walked down that aisle. David Park left because he was a coward who was scared of life. You want me to leave because you are scared of losing me. But look at me, Minho. Look at me. I am not going anywhere. If you want to know how a woman abandoned at the altar ended up stitching the wounds of the most dangerous man in Seoul, you need to listen closely. This isn't a story about a damsel in distress. It's a story about what happens when a queen decides to tame a dragon. If you are ready for a love story that bleeds, hit that subscribe button right now. You don't want to miss what comes next. The silence inside the grand hall of the Shilla Hotel in Seoul was not empty. It was heavy. It was a living, breathing thing that had claws, and it was currently tearing Amara Nakato apart. It had been 45 minutes. 45 minutes since the organist had stopped playing the bridal march. 45 minutes since the whispers had started in the back rows, sounding like the buzzing of angry wasps. 45 minutes since Amara had been left standing alone at the altar, a vision of tragic elegance in a dress that cost more than her father's house in Kampala. Have you ever felt humiliation? Not just embarrassment, not just a flushing of cheeks when you trip on a sidewalk. I mean the kind of humiliation that settles deep in your marrow. The kind that makes you feel like your skin is being peeled back, layer by layer, exposing everything you are to a room full of people who want to see you bleed. That is what Amara felt. She was 26 years old. She had moved across the world, leaving the warm red dust of Uganda for the steel and glass of South Korea. She had learned the language. She had learned the customs. She had endured the side eyes and the subtle insults from David's mother, who thought Amara was too dark, too foreign, too loud for her precious son. Amara had swallowed it all because she loved David Park, or she thought she did. And now, she stood there, clutching a bouquet of white orchids that were beginning to wilt from the heat of her trembling hands. The best man, a nervous fellow named Jinwoo, had checked his phone 5 times in the last minute. Finally, he couldn't avoid it anymore. He walked over to Amara, his shoes clicking loudly on the marble floor. He didn't look her in the eye. He looked at her shoulder. Amara, where is he? Amara's voice was a shard of glass. Tell me he's in traffic. Tell me he's sick. Tell me anything, Jinwoo. He's not coming. The words were whispered, but in that cavernous, silent room, they sounded like gunshots. He sent a text. Jinwoo continued, his voice shaking. He says he can't do this. He says he's sorry. A text. 3 years of relationship. A move across continents. A love she had staked her entire life on. Ended with a text message sent to another man. Amara felt the room spin. She could feel the 400 pairs of eyes boring into her back. These were the elites of Seoul, the business tycoons, the socialites, the people who had treated her like a curiosity, a temporary exotic pet that David would eventually tire of. Now, they were getting exactly what they expected. The African girl who thought she could marry into the Park dynasty was being put back in her place. She should run. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to drop the flowers, kick off the heels, and run until her lungs burned. Run back to the airport. Run back to the warmth of Kampala. But her feet were lead. She was frozen in the spotlight of her own destruction. The priest cleared his throat. It was an awful, dry sound. Perhaps, he stammered, looking around nervously. Perhaps the bride should retire to the dressing room. We can clear the hall. Amara couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. He isn't coming. The voice didn't come from the priest. It didn't come from the best man. It came from the back of the room, rolling over the congregation like a dark thundercloud. It was a baritone so deep, so commanding, that the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees instantly. The heavy double doors at the entrance swung open. A man walked in. The collective gasp of the audience was audible. People didn't just turn to look. They shrank back. Chairs scraped against the floor as guests instinctively made way, creating a wide path down the center aisle. It was like watching the Red Sea part, but not out of reverence. Out of fear. It was Kong Minho. Even Amara, through her haze of tears and shock, knew who he was. Everyone in South Korea knew who he was, though few spoke his name above a whisper in polite society. On paper, he was the CEO of K-Star Holdings, a logistics and shipping conglomerate. But on the streets, in the shadows where the real power flowed, he was the Imugi, the serpent, the head of the Seven Circles Syndicate. He was danger personified. He wore a black tuxedo that fit his broad shoulders with lethal precision. His hair was swept back, revealing a face that was devastatingly handsome but carved from cold marble. A faint scar cut through his left eyebrow, the only imperfection on a visage that looked like it had been forgotten by mercy. Min-ho didn't look at the guests. He didn't look at the priest. His eyes, dark as the void, were locked solely on Amara. He walked down the aisle with a predatory grace. Click, click, click. Each footstep echoed on the marble floor. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. Why was he here? David's family had business dealings with K-Star, obscure connections Amara had never asked about, but Minho wasn't on the guest list. A man like him didn't attend weddings. He presided over funerals. He stopped at the altar, towering over her. Up close, he smelled of sandalwood, expensive tobacco, and rain. The energy radiating off him was terrifying, a tightly coiled violence that made the hair on Amara's arms stand up. He looked at her tear-streaked face. He looked at the trembling hands clutching the orchids. He looked at the empty space beside her, where David should have been. Then he turned to the crowd. His gaze swept over them, and Amara watched powerful men lower their eyes. She saw David's mother, who had been hiding a smirk behind a handkerchief just moments ago, turn pale and clutch her pearls. David Park has abdicated his position, Minho announced. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried to the furthest corners of the hall. Without a microphone, he has proven himself unworthy of this woman. He has proven himself a coward. He turned back to Amara. The coldness in his eyes shifted, just a fraction. It wasn't warmth exactly, but it was an intensity that stole her breath. It was the look of a man who sees something valuable sitting in the dust and decides to pick it up. A queen should not stand alone, he said softly. Amara found her voice. It was a broken whisper, barely escaping her throat. What are you doing? Saving you, he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. And taking what is mine. Before Amara could process the words, Minho extended his hand. Give me the ring. He wasn't speaking to her. He was speaking to the best man. Jinwoo, pale and shaking like a leaf in a storm, fumbled in his pocket. He produced the platinum band meant for David. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. Minho took the ring. He held it up to the light for a second, a sneer curling his lip, as if the object itself was tainted by the coward who had bought it, as if David's touch had soiled the metal. Then he looked at Amara. Amara Nakato, you have two choices right now. Amara stared at him. This stranger, this beautiful, terrifying stranger. Choice one. Minho continued, his voice low and intimate, creating a private world in the middle of the public spectacle. You can walk out of those doors alone. You can carry the pity of these people for the rest of your life. You can let this moment break you. You can let them win. He stepped closer, invading her personal space, his dark eyes consuming her. Or, he murmured, you can finish the ceremony with a man who does not run. You? Amara stared at him, her mind unable to catch up with reality. You want to marry me? Now, here, I am offering you protection, dignity, and a position that none of these people will ever dare to mock. He paused, glancing briefly at the reporters in the back who had their cameras raised. Marry me, and no one will ever look down on you again. They will be too busy trembling. It was insanity. It was a fever dream. Marry the most dangerous man in Seoul? A stranger? A criminal? But then Amara looked past him at the crowd. She saw David's mother. The pity in the room was suffocating. She saw the whispers. She thought of her family back in Uganda, gathered around a screen, watching the live stream. Their excitement turning to confusion. Their pride turning to shame. She looked back at Minho. In his eyes, she saw no pity. She saw power. She saw a challenge. Do not break. His eyes said, rise. Amara's spine straightened. Something ancient woke up inside her. The blood of her ancestors, women who had survived wars and famines and heartbreak, roared in her ears. She would not be the victim today. She would not be the punchline of a joke told in high society tea rooms. She took a deep breath. She looked at the bouquet in her hands, then dropped it. It hit the floor with a soft thud. She held out her left hand. A ripple of shock went through the room, followed by a deeper, stunned silence. A silence that was terrified to breathe. Minho took her hand. His grip was warm, firm, and calloused. Rough skin against her soft palm. He slid the ring onto her finger. It was slightly too big, but he held it in place with his thumb. Proceed, Minho ordered the priest. The priest, pale as a sheet and looking like he might faint, stammered through the vows. He skipped the sermon. He skipped the readings about love and patience. He went straight to the promises, his voice cracking on every other word. When it was Amara's turn to speak, she expected her voice to waver. She expected to cry. But when she opened her mouth, the voice that came out was clear, strong, defiant. I do. Minho looked at her, really looked at her, and for a second, the mask slipped, and she saw a flicker of respect. I do, Minho said. And just like that, the abandoned bride became the wife of the dragon. The ride from the hotel to Minho's estate was silent. They rode in the back of a black armored Maybach, separated from the driver by a thick glass partition. The city lights of Seoul blurred past, streaks of neon in the rain that had started to fall. Amara sat as far from him as the leather seat allowed. She was pressing herself against the door, her beautiful dress bunched up around her. The adrenaline of the ceremony was fading, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. What have I done? The thought circled her mind like a vulture. I just married a stranger. I just married a mob boss. Minho was staring out the window, one hand resting on his knee. He looked completely at ease, as if he hadn't just hijacked a wedding. Stop shaking, he said. He didn't look at her. His voice was flat, devoid of the intensity he had shown at the altar. I don't hurt women, Amara, and I certainly don't hurt my wife. Amara turned to look at his profile, the sharp jawline, the scar on his brow. Why? She asked. Her voice was small in the quiet car. Why did you do it? Minho turned slowly. The streetlights cast shadows across the planes of his face, making him look like a black and white photograph. David Park owed me a debt, he said. A significant one. He couldn't pay it with money. Amara felt a sick feeling in her stomach. A debt? So he paid it with the wedding? With his dignity? He paid it with his absence, Minho corrected. He wagered his future on a venture that failed. A venture I warned him against. When I came to collect, he begged. He offered me his assets. He offered me his reputation. And then he mentioned you. Me? Amara whispered. He said his fiancée was beautiful, exotic, intelligent. He said that if he disappeared, perhaps I would find value in acquiring his life. Minho's jaw tightened, and a flash of genuine anger passed through his eyes. He tried to sell you to me, Amara, like a piece of furniture, like a car he couldn't afford payments on anymore. Amara gasped. The air left her lungs. The man she had loved, the man she had laughed with, the man she had learned to cook kimchi jjigae for. He sold me? I declined, Minho said coldly. I don't trade in human beings. I told him to leave the city, to disappear. I gave him a head start. Then why? Why are we here? Why did you marry me? Because I came to the church. I wanted to see the woman he was so willing to discard. I wanted to see what kind of woman was worth betraying. He looked at her, his gaze sweeping over the white dress that was now wrinkled. I saw you standing there, waiting, And I realized that a woman who can stand tall while her world collapses is rare. Too rare to be left with wolves in that room. So this is pity, Amara said bitterly. You saved the stray cat because you felt bad for it. No, Minho leaned forward and the air in the car grew heavy again. This is not pity. Pity is useless. This is an investment. I need a wife. My board of directors, the elders in the syndicate, they think I am too volatile. They want to see stability. They want to see a family man. A marriage of convenience, she murmured. A marriage of survival. For both of us, you get protection. You get revenge on the man who left you, and I get the appearance of stability. The car slowed as they passed through massive iron gates. They wound up a long driveway lined with ancient pine trees until a fortress of glass and concrete emerged from the darkness. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a bunker designed by an architect who hated warmth. Welcome home, Minho said, but the word home sounded foreign on his tongue. Life in the fortress was a gilded cage. The house was magnificent, yes. High ceilings, heated floors, art on the walls that probably belonged in national museums. Amara was given a wing of her own, a wardrobe filled with designer clothes she hadn't chosen, a staff that bowed so low she couldn't see their faces. But it was lonely. Minho was a ghost. He left before dawn and returned long after she had gone to bed. Sometimes, late at night, she would hear him in the study. She would hear him speaking in low, angry tones in Korean, Japanese, sometimes Russian. She would see a security detail, men with earpieces and bulges under their jackets, patrolling the grounds like Dobermans. Amara missed Uganda. She missed the noise of Kampala. She missed the boda-bodas honking, the smell of roasting maize on the street corners, the laughter of her sisters. Here, everything was silent. Everything was gray. Everything was cold. She felt like a collected item, a trophy placed on a shelf to be admired but never touched. Is this it? She asked herself one night, staring at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window. Is this my life now? A prisoner in a silk dress? No. Amara Nakado was not a prisoner. She was a woman who had crossed an ocean for love. She had lost a love, but she hadn't lost herself. She decided she wouldn't fade away. If she was a prisoner, she would be a loud one. She would be a vibrant one. She would take this gray world and force some color into it. 3 weeks into their marriage, Minho came home early. It was barely 7 p.m. He walked into the house, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder, his face gray with exhaustion. He froze in the hallway. The scent hit him first. It wasn't the usual sterile smell of lemon polish and expensive candles. It was rich. It was earthy. It was spicy. It smelled of peanuts, smoked meat, and onions. It smelled like life. He frowned, following the scent toward the kitchen. Usually, the kitchen was the domain of the head chef, a man who treated food like a science experiment. But tonight, the staff had been banished to the edges of the room. They stood there, looking terrified and confused. In the center of the kitchen, wearing a silk apron over her designer dress, was Amara. She was chopping vegetables with a rhythm that was almost musical. Chop, chop, scrape. She was humming, a low, soulful tune that vibrated in the sterile space. What are you doing? Minho asked. Amara turned, knife in hand. She didn't bow. She didn't tremble. She looked him right in the eye. I'm cooking, she said simply. Minho looked at the pot bubbling on the stove. The steam rising from it was thick and fragrant. We have chefs, Amara, Michelin star trained chefs. The chefs cook with tweezers, Amara said, pointing the knife at him. They make art. I was hungry for food. Real food. The food in this house has no soul. I needed something real. Minho blinked. No one spoke to him like that. Not his lieutenants. Not his enemies. And certainly not the women in his life. But he found himself walking further into the kitchen. What is it? He asked, nodding at the pot. Luambo, she said. It's chicken stewed in banana leaves with peanut sauce, served with mashed plantains. It's from home. Her voice softened on the word home. And for a second, Minho saw the sadness behind her defiance. He saw the loneliness he had inflicted on her. Sit, she commanded. Minho stared at her. Excuse me? Sit. She pointed the spoon at the island counter. Unless the dragon is afraid of a little peanut sauce? He should have been annoyed. He should have told her to leave the staff to their work. But he found himself pulling out a stool. He sat down. He loosened his tie. Amara placed a bowl in front of him. It didn't look like the plated masterpieces he was used to. It looked messy. It looked hot. It looked inviting. Eat, she said. Minho hesitated. He picked up the spoon. He took a bite. The flavor exploded in his mouth. It was rich, savory, creamy from the peanuts, tender from the slow cooking. It was comforting in a way he hadn't experienced since he was a child, before the world turned cold, before he became the Mugi, before he had to eat in restaurants where the bill cost more than his mother's yearly rent. He took another bite, and another. He didn't speak. He just ate. Amara watched him, leaning her hip against the counter. She watched the way his shoulders relaxed. Just a fraction. She watched the way the lines of tension around his eyes smoothed out. It's acceptable, he said finally, though he scraped the bowl clean. Amara smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile since the wedding. It transformed her face. It made her radiant. It made the kitchen feel brighter. It's better than acceptable, husband, she teased. It's magic. Minho looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, he didn't see a strategic asset. He didn't see a damsel he had saved. He saw a woman who could create warmth in a freezer. Teach me, he said suddenly. Teach you to cook? Amara laughed. I don't think the syndicate would be impressed with your chopping skills. No, he said, his voice low. Teach me about where this comes from. Uganda. Tell me about the place that makes food taste like this. And so, the dinners became their ritual. Every night, Amara cooked. Sometimes Korean dishes, putting her own spin on them. Sometimes African dishes. And they talked. She told him about the red dust of her village, about the way rain sounded on a tin roof, about her father who was a strict schoolteacher, but who cried when she left for Korea. Minho, in turn, began to open the heavy iron doors of his past. Just a crack. He spoke of growing up on the streets of Busan, fighting for scraps, climbing the ladder of the underworld one broken bone at a time. He told her about the scar on his eyebrow, a knife fight when he was 16 over a stolen wallet. They call you a monster, Amara said one night, pouring him wine. I am, Minho replied, looking at his hands. I have done terrible things to keep this city in order, to keep power. Power requires cruelty. Amara, you saved me, she said softly. A monster doesn't save a stranger. A monster doesn't marry a woman just to save her dignity. Perhaps I just wanted to keep something beautiful for myself. His eyes locked onto hers. Dark, intense. The air between them crackled. It wasn't just gratitude anymore. It wasn't just curiosity. It was attraction, a pull so strong it felt magnetic. He reached out, his hand hovering near her cheek. His fingers were rough, dangerous, but his touch was ghost-like. For a moment, Amara thought he would kiss her. She wanted him to. God help her, she wanted him to. She wanted to know what it felt like to be kissed by the dragon. But then his phone rang. The mood shattered like glass. Minho looked at the screen, and the mask slammed back down over his face. The warmth vanished. The husband vanished. The boss returned. I have to go, he said abruptly, standing up. Minho? Lock the doors. Amara, do not wait up. And just like that, he was gone, leaving her alone in the kitchen with the smell of peanut sauce and a lingering ghost of an almost kiss. But the peace couldn't last. You can't live in a fortress without eventually hearing the wolves at the gate. 2 months later, the head of security, Yoon, found Amara in the garden. Yoon was a man of few words. He had a scar running down his neck and eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Kong, he said. Amara looked up from the rose bush. She was pruning. Just Amara, Yoon. Please. Mrs. Kong, he corrected firmly. We need to talk about safety. I'm safe here, aren't I? The walls are 20 feet high. The walls keep people out, Yoon said. But you have to leave the walls sometimes. And when you do, you need to understand something. You are not just Amara Nakado anymore. You are the wife of the Amugi. What does that mean? It means you are a target. The Vipers, a rival group, they know about you. They know Minho has taken a wife. They see you as a soft point, a way to hurt him. Amara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. A way to hurt him? Minho has never had a weakness before. He has never had anyone to lose. Now he has you. That evening, when Minho returned, Amara confronted him. Is it true? She asked. Am I a target? Minho stopped taking off his watch. He looked at her, his face unreadable. Yin talks too much. Is it true, Minho? Yes. Then teach me. Minho paused. Teach you what? Teach me how to not be a weakness. Teach me what to look for. I am not a doll, Minho. If I am in this life, if I am your wife, I want to be prepared. Minho studied her. He looked at the set of her jaw, the fire in her eyes. He walked over to her. Okay, he said. We start tomorrow. 6 a.m. The training sessions were brutal. Minho didn't go easy on her. He taught her how to spot a tail. He taught her where to strike a man to disable him. He taught her how to fall without breaking a bone. But it was more than training. It was intimacy. One morning, in the gym, he was showing her how to break a hold. He stood behind her, his arms wrapped around her, demonstrating the grip. You're too tense, he murmured, his breath warm on her ear. You need to relax into hold before you explode out of it. Easy for you to say. Amara breathed. She could feel the hard wall of his chest against her back. She could smell the soap on his skin. Her heart was hammering, and it wasn't from the exercise. Minho tightened his grip, just slightly. Feel where my weight is, he instructed. His hands were on her hips now. Shift your center of gravity. Here. He guided her hips. The movement was small, but the contact was electric. Amara turned in his arms. She was supposed to break the hold, but she didn't. She just turned. Suddenly, they were chest to chest, breathing the same air. Minho looked down at her. His eyes were dark, dilated. His hands didn't leave her waist. You're getting better, he whispered. Amara looked up at his lips. Am I? The tension was thick enough to choke on. This wasn't a marriage of convenience anymore. It was a forest fire waiting for a spark. Minho stepped back abruptly. He cleared his throat. That's enough for today. Go shower. He walked away, but Amara saw his hands. They were clenched into fists at his sides. He was fighting it. He was fighting the pull just as hard as she was. A week later, a box appeared on Amara's bed. Inside was a dress. Gold sequins. Floor length. Backless. It was stunning. It was a statement. There was a note. Asterisk for the charity gala tonight. Wear the necklace. Asterisk. Beside the dress was a velvet box. Inside lay a diamond necklace that looked heavy enough to sink a ship. Amara dressed with care. When she walked down the stairs, Minho was waiting at the bottom. He looked up, and for a moment, he forgot to breathe. He walked up 2 steps to meet her. He didn't say she looked beautiful. He didn't give her a compliment. He just reached out and took her hand. Turn around, he commanded softly. She turned. He lifted the heavy diamond necklace and fastened it around her neck. His fingers lingered on her skin. His thumb traced the line of her spine. It's heavy, Amara whispered. It's armor, Minho replied. Tonight, you are not just my wife. You are my queen. Let them see you shine. They arrived at the gala like royalty. When they walked in, the room went quiet. Amara saw faces she recognized. The people from her wedding. The people who had mocked her. Now they didn't mock. They bowed. She saw David's mother in the corner. The older woman looked at Amara, then looked at Minho, whose hand was possessively on the small of Amara's back. David's mother quickly looked away, terrified. Amara realized something then. Minho was right. He had given her dignity. He had given her power. Relax. Amara whispered to him as they moved through the crowd. You look like you're about to murder the waiter. The waiter is looking at your neck. Minho growled. He's looking at the diamonds. Minho. Still, I don't like it. Amara laughed softly. For a monster, you are very jealous. I am possessive. Amara, there's a difference. What is mine I keep. and I protect. They were moving toward the exit. The night almost over when the world ended. The lights in the ballroom cut out. Pitch black. Amara froze. Screams erupted from the darkness. Then red emergency lights flickered on, casting the room in a hellish, bloody glow. Down. Minho didn't ask. He didn't hesitate. He shoved Amara to the floor, covering her body with his own. His weight was heavy, crushing, comforting. Gunfire erupted. Pop, pop, pop. The sound of glass shattering. The sound of chaos. Stay down. Minho roared. He pulled a handgun from inside his tuxedo jacket. Amara hadn't even known he was carrying it. He fired back into the darkness. His movements were precise, practiced, lethal. He wasn't the man who ate peanut stew in her kitchen. He wasn't the man who fumbled with her necklace. He was the dragon. Minho! Amara screamed as a bullet chipped the marble pillar beside her head. Dust sprayed her face. Yoon! Minho shouted. Get her out! Now! Strong hands grabbed Amara. It was Yoon. He dragged her toward the service exit. No. Minho! Amara looked back. Minho was standing in the open. He was drawing the fire away from her. He was a silhouette of violence, shooting with one hand, reloading with the other. She saw a figure lunge from the shadows. A man with a knife. Minho turned, but not fast enough. The blade sank into his shoulder. Minho didn't scream. He didn't even grunt. He grabbed the attacker's wrist, twisted it with a sickening crunch, and threw the man through a glass display case. But he was bleeding. Dark blood was soaking his white shirt. Go! He roared at Yoon, his eyes meeting Amara's for a split second. In that look, there was terror, not for himself, but for her. Yoon shoved Amara into the waiting car. The door slammed shut. They peeled away, tires screeching, leaving the chaos and the husband she was just beginning to love behind in the dark. The drive back to the fortress was a blur of rain and silence. Amara sat in the back of the armored car, her gold dress ruined, her hands trembling in her lap. She wasn't shaking from fear anymore. She was shaking from a specific kind of cold that only comes when you realize the person who keeps you warm might be gone. Yoon drove with a stoic intensity, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors. He didn't speak, but the tension in his shoulders screamed loud enough. When they finally passed through the iron gates, the fortress looked different. It didn't look like a prison tonight. It looked like a sanctuary. But a sanctuary is useless if the priest is dead. Amara paced the floor of the grand entrance hall for 3 hours. The marble was cold under her bare feet. She had lost her shoes somewhere in the chaos. Her hands were stained with dark spots. Minho's blood, from when she had touched him before Yoon pulled her away. She scrubbed at them with a wet cloth, but the stain felt deeper than skin. Finally, the heavy front doors groaned open. Minho walked in. He looked like a ghost of the man who had left earlier. He was pale, his skin the color of old paper. Sweat matted his hair to his forehead. His left arm was in a sling, and his white shirt was a map of violence, soaked in red. You're alive, Amara breathed. The relief was so sharp it hurt. She ran toward him. Don't. His voice was a rasp, like stones grinding together. He held up his good hand, palm out. A barrier. Don't come near me. You're hurt, Amara said, ignoring him. She reached for him again. I'm filthy, he spat. He stumbled back, away from her touch. You saw what I am. You saw what my world is. He walked unsteadily toward the liquor cabinet in the living room. He grabbed a bottle of whiskey with shaking hands, not bothering with a glass. He took a long pull, wincing as the alcohol hit his system. This is why I tried to keep you hidden, he said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. This is a reality. Amara, it's not charity galas and diamond necklaces. It's bullets. It's blood. It's death in a ballroom while people scream. I don't care, she said. Her voice was steady now. You should care. He turned and smashed the whiskey bottle against the wall. Glass exploded. Amber liquid ran down the expensive wallpaper like tears. You were almost killed tonight because of me, because of who I am. The vipers, they struck because they knew I would be distracted, because they knew I had a weakness. He turned to her, his eyes wild with pain and self-loathing. It was the look of a trapped animal gnawing off its own leg. You are the weakness, Amara. My love for you makes me weak. The silence that followed was louder than the gunshot had been. It hung in the air, vibrating. Your love? Amara whispered. Minho froze. He looked like a man who had said too much, like a man who had accidentally revealed the code to his safe. He slumped against the counter, the adrenaline crash finally hitting him. His legs gave out, and he slid down to the floor, his head hanging low. Yes, he groaned. God help me. I fell in love with you. He looked up at the ceiling, blinking back something that might have been tears or might have been exhaustion. I didn't want to. I tried not to. I tried to stay away. But you with your cooking and your stubbornness and your light, you broke into my chest. You made a home in a graveyard. Amara. He looked at her then, and the vulnerability in his eyes broke her heart. And now I have put you in danger. You have to leave. I'll arrange a plane. Tonight, you can go back to Uganda. You'll be rich. You'll be safe. You'll never have to see this face again. Amara walked across the room. Her bare feet crunched on a piece of broken glass, but she didn't flinch. She knelt in front of him, heedless of the mess, heedless of the blood. She reached out and took his face in her hands. His skin was burning with fever. You foolish man, she said softly. Her voice trembled with emotion. Amara, leave. No, I am a monster. You are my husband, she said fiercely. She forced him to look at her, to really see her. You took my hand when everyone else abandoned me. You gave me a home when I was homeless. You shielded me with your own body tonight. David Park left because he was scared of life. You want me to leave because you're scared of losing me. She leaned in, resting her forehead against his. She could feel his erratic breathing. She could smell the iron of blood and the peat of whiskey. But I am not going anywhere, Minho. I chose you at the altar. I choose you now. In the blood. In the mess. I choose you. Minho looked at her. He searched her eyes for any sign of fear, for any sign of hesitation. He found none. Only a fire that matched his own. You stay, he whispered, his voice cracking. And there is no going back. This life will be hard. It will be ugly. Amara smiled through her tears. A sad, beautiful smile. I am Ugandan, she said. We are made of iron and earth. I can handle hard. I can handle ugly. As long as I do it with you. Minho let out a ragged breath. It was half sob, half laugh. With his good arm, he reached out and pulled her against his chest. He buried his face in her neck, breathing her in. He held her as if she was the only solid thing in a spinning universe. As if she was the anchor keeping him from drifting into the abyss. Amara held him back. She stroked his hair. She kissed the scar on his brow. And right there on the floor of the kitchen, surrounded by broken glass and spilled whiskey, the marriage became real. Not a contract. Not a debt payment. A bond forged in fire. For the next 2 weeks, the fortress was quiet. But it was a different kind of quiet. It wasn't lonely anymore. It was intimate. Amara took charge. She didn't let the doctors hover. She changed Minho's bandages herself. She cleaned the wound on his shoulder, her hands gentle but firm. She cooked him soups rich with ginger and garlic to help him heal. Minho was a terrible patient. He growled. He tried to work from bed. He tried to get up too early. But Amara just gave him a look. The one that said, don't try me, and he would lie back down, grumbling. But there was a softness to him now. He watched her constantly. When she sat in the chair by his bed reading, his eyes would trace her profile. When she slept, he would stay awake just to listen to her breathe. The power dynamic shifted. The guards, the scary men with the earpieces, started bowing deeper to Amara. They had seen her stay. They had seen her handle the dragon when he was wounded. She wasn't just the wife anymore. She was the lady of the house. She was a queen. But peace in their world is always temporary. The rat always returns to the sewer, or it tries to crawl back into the pantry. 2 weeks later, Minho was back on his feet. He was in his office at the K-Star headquarters, a glass tower that overlooked the city he ruled. Amara was sitting in a leather chair across from him, reading through some charity proposals. She looked every inch the part now. Her suit was tailored. Her posture was regal. The intercom buzzed. "Sir," Yoon's voice crackled. "We have him. Bring him in." The double doors opened. 2 guards walked in, dragging a man between them. He was disheveled. He was dirty. He smelled of fear and stale sweat. It was David Park. Amara stood up slowly. She looked at the man she had almost married, the man she had thought was her soulmate. He looked small, pathetic. "Nia, Amara," David pleaded. He tried to lunge toward her, but the guards held him back. "You have to help me. He's going to kill me. Tell him to let me go. Please. We loved each other once." Amara walked around the desk. She stood in front of him. She looked at his face, searching for any lingering feeling, any spark of the old love. She found nothing, just a hollow space where her heart used to break for him. "You sold me," she said calmly. Her voice was devoid of anger. It was just a statement of fact. "It wasn't like that," David cried, sweat dripping down his face. "I was desperate. I had no choice. You gambled me away like a poker chip," she continued. "You didn't love me, David. You loved that I adored you. You loved having an exotic accessory. But you never respected me, because you don't sell things you respect." She turned to Minho. He was leaning against his desk, watching her. His face was impassive, but his eyes were alert. He had placed a gun on the desk. A heavy, black pistol. It lay there like a question. Minho picked up the gun. He held out to Amara, handle first. "It is your right," he said softly. "He took everything from you. Your dignity, your heart, your trust. You can take his future. No one will know. He is a ghost already." Amara looked at the gun. It was heavy, cold. David whimpered. "Amara, please, please." "I'm sorry." Amara looked at David. Then she looked at Minho. She saw the dark expectation in Minho's eyes. He was ready to do it for her. He was ready to add another stain to his soul, to clean hers. But Amara shook her head. She didn't take the gun. "Let him go," she said. Minho raised an eyebrow. "Go? He isn't worth your anger," Amara said, turning back to David. "And he certainly isn't worth the stain on my soul. Killing him would mean he still matters. It would mean he still has power over me." She stepped closer to David, her eyes hard as diamonds. "You are nothing to me, David Park. You are a bad memory. A lesson learned. Go. Live your small, scared life. Look over your shoulder every day. That is punishment enough." She turned her back on him. Minho smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. A smile that promised David that while he might live, he would never truly be free. "As my wife commands," Minho said. He signaled the guards. "Get him out of my sight, before I change your mind." As the doors closed on David's sobbing figure, the room fell silent. Minho placed the gun back in the drawer. He walked over to Amara. He wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You are merciful," he murmured. "I am busy," she corrected, leaning back into him. "I have a charity to run, a household to manage, and a husband who needs his dressing changed in an hour." Minho laughed, a low rumble against her back. "I think I like this new Amara. She is frightening." She learned from the best, Amara said, turning in his arms. Minho looked down at her. His eyes were full of awe, full of the love that he was still learning how to carry. "I love you, Amara," he whispered. The words were heavy, weighted with everything they had been through. "I know," she whispered back. She reached up and kissed him. It was deep, possessive, a promise. "I love you too, my dragon." Outside, the rain of soul fell hard against the glass, washing away the dirt of the city. But inside, high above the streets, there was warmth. There was a smell of lingering spices in the air. And there was a love that started in silence, forged in fire, and ended in an unbreakable choice. Amara looked out at the city lights. She thought about the girl who had stood at the altar crying. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who knew that sometimes the fairy tale doesn't start with a kiss. Sometimes it starts with betrayal. Sometimes the prince isn't the one on the white horse. Sometimes the prince is a monster in the dark who burns down the world to keep you safe. And honestly, she preferred the monster. If you love the story of power, betrayal, and redemption, hit that like button right now. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. We have more stories coming that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Tell me in the comments, would you have chosen Dragon or would you have Run? Until next time,